Welcome to the deep dive. We take this huge stack of sources, ancient texts, archaeology, modern analysis, and we pull out the really key nuggets of knowledge just for you.
That's right.
Today, we're diving deep into a name that, well, it just conjures up these images, doesn't it? Babylon.
Instantly. You think wonders, empires,
Yeah.
maybe those mythical gardens.
Exactly. But we're aiming to show you that the historical reality, it's actually even more fascinating than the legends.
Yeah, our mission today is really to cut through all that, to pull out the crucial insights from this really rich material we've gathered.
We want to give you a genuine shortcut to understanding the complex story of Mesopotamia's most famous city.
It's not just about the rise and fall, though that's part of it.
Yeah.
We're exploring how it thrived, how it adapted, and maybe most surprisingly, how its influence never really went away.
You might find its heartbeat still pulsing today in ways you don't expect.
Definitely.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning, or maybe even before the beginning of Babylon itself. We need to talk about the Amorites, right? These ancestors.
That's the place to start. These were nomadic people migrating into Mesopotamia way back in the 3rd millennium BCE.
And they started settling down, forming townships.
Exactly, clustering together. And out of these, Babylon emerged as, well, the most important one.
What made it so special? Was it just luck?
Not really luck, more strategic brilliance. Its location was key, right near where the Tigris and Euphrates rivers come close together.
Ah, a natural crossroads.
Precisely. So by the early 2nd millennium BCE, it's already a major power, but it really hits its peak under one particular king, Hammurabi.
Hammurabi. Now, there's a name most people have probably heard. His reign, roughly 1792 to 1750 BCE, that was Babylon's first golden age, you could say.
Absolutely. And his legacy is cemented, quite literally, in the Code of Hammurabi.
Right, those 282 laws, inscribed in cuneiform, that cool wedge-shaped writing on a huge stone pillar, a stele. How tall is it?
Over 7 feet tall. It was found in 1901, and if you want to see it today, you've got to go to the Louvre in Paris.
And get this, his image, Hammurabi's likeness, is actually carved into the wall of the U.S. Supreme Court chamber.
Which really speaks to its enduring influence, doesn't it? But here's where it gets really interesting. The code itself. It's got this dual nature.
How so?
Well, on one hand, yeah, some laws seem incredibly harsh to us now. Death penalty for selling stolen goods, or if a house you built collapsed and killed someone.
Wow. Heavy stuff.
And if a slave denied their master, they could have their ear cut off.
Ouch. Okay, that's a brutal side, but you said dual nature.
Yes, because other parts show this remarkable, almost modern-seeming sense of care. Provisions that look a lot like the earliest forms of alimony, for example. Real responsibility for marginalized groups.
That's fascinating. Such a contrast.
It really is. And beyond the specific laws, the code laid down a fundamental legal idea. Guilt required evidence. Proof had to be established.
Innocent until proven guilty. The seeds of it are right there.
Pretty much. Now, Hammurabi framed it as divine, the sun god Shamash, giving him the laws, to boost his authority.
Standard practice for rulers back then, I suppose.
Right. But scholars see it more as an evolution.
Yeah.
Building on existing laws, previous court decisions, maybe even earlier codes like Urnama's, which actually used fines more than physical punishments.
So how much was this code actually used in day-to-day court cases? Was it like a legal textbook judges consulted?
Probably not exactly like that. Wasn't comprehensive, doesn't even outlaw murder directly, for instance. And court records don't show judges constantly referencing it.
So its power was more symbolic.
I think so.
Yeah.
Is Hammurabi's big public declaration. I am a just king. My rule ensures fairness for everyone, rich or poor. That ideal of impartial justice. We're still chasing that today.
It's a powerful statement indeed. But even Hammurabi's Babylon didn't last forever in that form.
No, empires ebb and flow. After its peak, things declined, and then a major blow. 1595 BCE, the Hittites swept in and sacked the city.
Didn't they even carry off the statue of Marduk, the main god?
They did, a huge symbolic defeat. But into that chaos came a new group, the Kassites.
Right, the Kassite Dynasty. They ended up ruling for a remarkably long time, didn't they?
Over 4 centuries, roughly 1595 to 1155 BCE. Their origins are a bit fuzzy, maybe the Zagros Mountains, but their impact was significant.
They were the stabilizers then, after the turbulence.
Exactly. They brought order, focused on rebuilding, especially temples, expanding farmland, and under their rule, Babylonian culture really had a chance to, well, bloom quietly.
Quietly is maybe the key word, because it feels like this period is less known.
It is rather poorly documented, sadly. Take Nippur, a major Kassite site. Thousands of tablets found, maybe 12,000, but only about 20% have even been published. There's so much we still don't know.
So what do we know? What are the key sources for this long era?
One really interesting source type is the kuduru. These are boundary stones, basically.
Boundary stones.
Yeah, donations to. They recorded royal land grants to important people, detailing their rights, their duties. And they usually had divine curses carved on them, too.
Curses, like, don't mess with this property line or else.
Pretty much. Divine protection for the grant. And these weren't small plots. The average grant was around 250 hectares. They'd often place the kuduru itself in a temple.
Like a sacred deed, backed by the gods. Fascinating. What else was happening?
Well, this was also a high point for diplomacy, especially in the 14th and 13th centuries BCE. The Babylonian kings were considered great kings, equals to the pharaohs of Egypt, the Hittite rulers.
So real international players.
Absolutely. Lots of letters exchanged, lots of gifts, sholmanu, they call them. We see this vividly in the Amarna letters found in Egypt.
Any good example?
There's a great one from King Bernaburiash II. He writes to the Egyptian pharaoh, could be Tutankhamun, asking for more gold for his temple construction. He calls their relationship a profitable friendship.
Very diplomatic and profitable.
They also cemented these ties with royal marriages. And Babylonian experts, doctors, scribes were sometimes sent abroad, like to the Hittite court. So cultural exchange was definitely happening.
And artistically, any Kassite innovations?
Yes, definitely. They pioneered using molded, baked bricks for decoration, often with figures of protective deities. We see this in places like Uruk. And they really mastered vitreous materials, enameled glass in bright blues, yellows, oranges for vases, architectural details. Beautiful stuff.
Setting the stage for later Babylonian art, perhaps.
In many ways, yes. And crucially for literature, this is when Standard Babylonian develops the classic literary form of the Akkadian language. Major works get standardized, canonized.
Like the Epic of Gilgamesh.
Exactly. The version we mostly know today, with its deep reflections on mortality and human destiny, really takes shape during the Kassite period. So while maybe poorly documented overall, it was culturally incredibly fertile.
Okay, so the Kassites eventually fade, and Babylon's relationship with its powerful northern neighbor, Assyria, becomes complicated.
Very complicated and often violent. Assyria actually destroyed Babylon twice in the 600s BCE, sacked it completely.
Twice, yet Babylon survived.
Its prestige was immense. Even after being destroyed, Assyrian scribes were still learning and writing in Babylonian. That tells you something about its enduring cultural gravity.
So the idea of Babylon remained powerful even when the city was rubble.
Precisely. And this sets the stage for its final, and perhaps most famous, resurgence. As Assyrian power started to wane, a Chaldean leader, Nabopolassar, saw his chance.
Chaldean, where do they fit in?
They were a group in southern Mesopotamia. Nabopolassar was a chieftain who seized control of Babylon around 625 BCE. He was ambitious.
And smart enough to find allies.
Very smart. He allied with the Medes, another rising power, and together they went after the Assyrians. They attacked the major Assyrian cities like Ashur and Nineveh.
And this was the end for Assyria.
This was the final blow. Assyrian dominance was over, and Babylon was poised to rise again, leading to the Neo-Babylonian Empire.
Which brings us to Nabopolassar's son, a name everyone knows from the Bible, Nebuchadnezzar II.
Indeed, reigning from 604 to 562 BCE. And he wasn't just a conqueror, he was a builder on a scale that was just staggering.
This is the Babylon of legend in many ways. What was his goal with all this building?
It was a massive statement, a declaration of Babylonian nationalism, a rejection of Assyrian dominance, and a showcase of his own power and piety. He was rebuilding Babylon to be the center of the world.
So what did it look like?
It was huge, meticulously planned, divided into districts connected by bridges. It had these enormous fortified walls and, famously, 8 monumental gates, each named after a god. We've only excavated 4 so far.
And the most famous gate?
Has to be the Ishtar Gate, the main northern entrance. Just magnificent.
The one that's now reconstructed in Berlin.
That's the one. Robert Koldewey, the German archaeologist, painstakingly dismantled it early in the 20th century and shipped it back. Even reconstructed, you get a sense of its incredible scale and the vibrant blue glazed bricks.
Speaking of those bricks, they weren't just plain blue, were they?
Oh, no. Leading up to the gate was the processional way, this wide avenue, maybe 63 feet across, paved with limestone and red breccia. And the walls along it and the gate itself were covered in these glazed bricks.
Not tiles you mentioned earlier, but actual bricks.
Right, baked bricks, using that technique honed back in the Kassite era. Another nod to Babylonian heritage. And the images. Wow.
Lions.
Hundreds of golden yellow lions, symbols of the goddess Ishtar, striding against that deep blue background. Also bulls, representing Adad, the storm god. And on the gate itself, the Mushushu dragons.
Mushushu. What are they?
Marduk's symbol. Kind of a composite beast, serpent's body and head, lion's forelegs, eagle's hind legs, the scorpion's tail sometimes. A furious snake, as the name suggests. Really striking creatures.
How did this art compare to, say, the Assyrian style they were rejecting?
It's a fascinating contrast. Assyrian art, think of their palace reliefs, often shows immense power, but it's very tense. Muscle straining, very rigid poses, almost aggressive.
Like they're flexing constantly.
Exactly. Nebuchadnezzar's Babylonian art feels different. The lions, for instance, are powerful, ferocious even, but they seem more natural, more fluid. Less like they're posing for a propaganda poster.
So maybe a message of confidence, not needing to shout about their strength.
Perhaps. Like the workout is over, time to cool down. A more settled, established grandeur.
And Nebuchadnezzar presided over all this from his palace.
His southern palace, it was enormous, 900 by 600 feet, multiple courtyards, a massive throne room. The walls inside were decorated with more glazed brick mosaics, stylized trees of life, crenellations like city walls, more lions.
Just layers upon layers of symbolism and grandeur.
Absolutely. And a really neat discovery was made in the palace crypts, these basement areas.
What did they find?
A cuneiform tablet. Not very exciting on its own, maybe, but it listed rations, food allowances being given to captives,
Okay.
including Jehoiachin, the exiled king of Judah, mentioned in the Bible. It was this little piece of direct, elegant confirmation of the biblical account found right there in the palace records.
Wow. That's incredible, connecting texts and archaeology like that.
That's what makes this field so exciting.
Now, speaking of Babylon and legends,
Yeah.
we have to address the big one, the Hanging Gardens, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. Where were they?
Ah, yes. The abiding question. Because, frankly, we haven't found them in Babylon. No definitive archaeological evidence.
But the stories are so persistent, attributed sometimes to Queen Semiramis, sometimes to Nebuchadnezzar building them for his Median wife who missed her homeland hills.
Right. The accounts are varied and often much later than Nebuchadnezzar's time. This lack of contemporary evidence or any mention in Babylonian texts themselves is puzzling.
So what's the thinking now? Did they even exist?
Well, one compelling theory, put forward by Dr. Stephanie Daly, suggests the legend got misplaced, that the famous gardens weren't in Babylon at all, but actually in Nineveh, the Assyrian capital.
In Nineveh, but why would they be called the Hanging Gardens of Babylon?
The theory is that after Assyria fell and Babylon became the dominant power, Nineveh's wonders might have been sort of culturally reassigned to Babylon in later traditions, maybe because Babylon was just the more famous name by then. King Sennacherib of Assyria actually boasted extensively about his amazing palace gardens in Nineveh, complete with sophisticated irrigation, terraces. It sounds a lot like the descriptions.
And is there other evidence supporting the Nineveh theory?
A key point is Herodotus, the Greek historian. He visited Babylon in the 5th century BCE. He described the walls, the gates, the city layout in detail. But he never mentions any spectacular gardens. If they were there, and as wondrous as claimed, you'd think he'd notice.
That's a pretty strong argument from silence, isn't it?
It is suggestive. So maybe the Hanging Gardens were real, just not in Babylon. A fascinating historical detective story.
Okay, besides potential phantom gardens, what about the real spiritual heart of Nebuchadnezzar's Babylon?
That would be the massive religious complex dedicated to Marduk. 2 main structures. The Isagila, which was Marduk's main temple.
And the huge ziggurat, right, the Edamanenki.
Exactly. The Edamanenki. Its name means something like the house that is the foundation of heaven and earth. It was an ancient structure, but Nabopolassar started renovating it, and Nebuchadnezzar finished the job, making it truly colossal, probably hundreds of feet tall.
Is this the structure often linked to the Tower of Babel story?
That's the prevailing theory, yes. Its immense size, its periods of falling into disrepair and then being rebuilt. It likely inspired the biblical narrative about human hubris reaching for the heavens.
Can archaeologists study it easily today?
Unfortunately, no. It's a tough site. The water table is very high now, making deep excavation difficult. There's also an important Muslim tomb built over part of the Esagila temple complex. And of course, recent wars and instability in Iraq have severely hampered archaeological work.
So much of it remains a puzzle, waiting for future discovery.
Very much so. A lot of secrets still buried under the soil.
So Nebuchadnezzar's reign was this high point. What happened after him? Did the glory last?
Not for long, in terms of independence. His successors had short, often turbulent reigns. His son, Amel-Marduk, ruled briefly before being killed, possibly in a family conspiracy.
Intrigue already.
Then his brother-in-law, Neriglissar, took over, followed by his infant son, Labashi-Marduk, who was quickly murdered and replaced by Nabonidus.
That's a lot of turnover. Doesn't sound stable.
It hints at serious internal disorder. And this Nabonidus, he wasn't from the main royal line. He was an Aramean general who seized power. He would turn out to be the last independent king of Babylon.
Nabonidus. There are strange stories about him, aren't there? About him being mad, worshipping the moon god Sin instead of Marduk.
Yes, those stories exist, particularly in later sources like the Cyrus Cylinder and some biblical traditions. But historians are now quite skeptical.
Do you think they were just propaganda?
It seems very likely. Probably lies cooked up later by Babylonian scribes trying to flatter Cyrus the Great, the Persian king who conquered Babylon. A way to justify foreign rule by painting the previous king as incompetent or impious.
Makes sense. Discredit the old boss to please the new one.
Exactly. But his reign definitely wasn't smooth sailing. We see evidence of serious economic problems.
Like what?
Commercial records show prices skyrocketing. Male slave prices up 20% from Nebuchadnezzar's time. Land prices doubled. Looks like crippling inflation.
Not a good sign. And didn't he also leave Babylon for a long time?
He did. Controversially, he spent 10 years away in Timah, an oasis in Arabia, leaving his son Belshazzar in charge back in Babylon. His reasons are debated, maybe religious, strategic, health. We don't really know for sure.
But leaving the capital for a decade, that couldn't have helped stability.
Almost certainly not. And while he was away, or perhaps after he returned, the Persian threat under Cyrus grew stronger. Eventually, the Persians attacked. Belshazzar was killed in the fighting. Nabonidus was captured and exiled.
And just like that, the Neo-Babylonian Empire, this great revival, was over.
Its independence was, yes, in 539 BCE, relatively short-lived compared to the long history of the city itself.
So if we step back and look at the bigger picture, why did Mesopotamian civilization, including Babylon, seem to sort of fade away, culturally speaking, compared to, say, Greece or Rome, whose influence feels more continuous?
That's a huge and fascinating question. One major factor, as Georges Roux points out, is that Mesopotamia never really had that single unified national identity or government that managed to consolidate everything, package it up, and pass it on in the same way Rome did with its laws, language, and culture across its empire.
It was more fragmented, a collection of city-states and empires rising and falling.
Largely, yes. And then came Alexander the Great and the Hellenistic period. The Greeks didn't just conquer, they brought a whole new cultural system.
A complete floor-to-ceiling renovation, as you put it earlier.
Pretty much. New language, new writing system, alphabetic script, replaced complex cuneiform, new gods, new philosophy, new art styles. It effectively sidelined the Mesopotamian traditions. Gilgamesh, the ziggurats, cuneiform script. They became relics, not living parts of the culture.
Were the Greeks just not interested in Mesopotamian history?
Largely, no. They were fascinated by certain aspects, particularly Babylonian astronomy and astrology. They cherry-picked what fit their worldview. But they didn't seem interested in Mesopotamian history or literature for its own sake. Names like Sargon, Hammurabi, even Nebuchadnezzar faded from common knowledge fairly quickly in the Greek world. They had their own antiquity to focus on.
So Roux's conclusion was that Mesopotamian civilization essentially died of old age, replaced by a younger, more dynamic Hellenistic culture.
That's his poignant summary. The old ways, the literature few could read anymore. The art tied to forgotten kings, the science mixed with divination just couldn't compete in the new, rationalizing, commercially driven Hellenistic world.
No, that's the crucial point. It's not the whole truth. While the civilization in its original form ended, its influence, its legacy, that's a different matter entirely. It didn't just die, it echoed.
Okay, so what does this all mean for us today? Where are these echoes?
They're woven into the fabric of our world in ways we often don't even realize. Think about timekeeping. 60 seconds in a minute, 60 minutes in an hour.
Exactly. That's sexagesimal system, straight from Mesopotamia. Same for the 360 degrees in a circle we use in geometry and navigation.
Wow, okay, that's fundamental. What else?
Basic mathematics owes a lot to them. Even things like crowning kings, that ceremony has roots in Assyrian and Babylonian practice. Symbols we see everywhere in art and design, crescents, crosses, the tree of life motif, they were Mesopotamian inventions or popularizations.
Even our language?
Yes. Quite a few English words trace back to Akkadian, the language of Babylon and Assyria. Words like cane, alcohol, though the distillation process came later. Gypsum, myrrh, saffron, they're linguistic fossils from Mesopotamia.
And culturally.
Yeah.
Stories, myths.
Huge influence there.
Yeah.
Obviously, many stories and themes in the Hebrew Bible have clear parallels and origins in Mesopotamian literature, creation myths, flood stories, and the influence spreads further. One scholar provocatively suggested that Gilgamesh is the real archetype behind figures like Hercules. These narratives shaped Western thought profoundly.
It wasn't just contained to the West either, was it?
No, Michael Rostopsev, a great historian, noted how Babylonian and Persian art styles traveled east, influencing artistic developments in India and even China. It had a truly global reach, far beyond what we might initially think.
So despite the civilization itself fading, its ideas and innovations kept traveling, kept adapting, kept influencing.
Precisely. Which brings us back to what Rue said at the end of his book. There's still so much we don't know. Countless archaeological sites, tells, waiting to be excavated in Iraq and Syria. Thousands upon thousands of tablets needing publication or restudy.
The work is far from over.
Generations of scholars will be busy for centuries piecing together the full story. Babylon's echoes are still being uncovered.
So there you have it. We've journeyed across millennia, from those early Amorite settlers through Hammurabi's code, the quiet Kassite era, Nebuchadnezzar's grandeur, and the final fall.
And we've seen how even when the buildings crumble and the language goes silent, the impact of a civilization can endure in truly profound ways.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? How much of our own world, our present, is built on these ancient foundations laid by people and cultures we barely remember. Their stories are literally buried under layers of history.
It does. And it poses a final thought for you, listening. What other hidden legacies, what other echoes from the deep past are shaping your world right now, just waiting for a deep dive to bring them back into the light?